Welcome to Brazen Education with Educator Barnes, a podcast with a focus on speaking your truth, being transparent to help others, and having no shame about it. Because we can't move forward until the truth is known. Hey, Educator Barnes here, and today I'm going to talk about teaching with chronic pain. Last week on Twitter, I came across a tweet where an educator had asked to connect with other educators who had either taught with chronic pain or debilitating pain. And when I saw it, I was like, well, should I hop onto this thread and respond? And then I decided to. And then I thought about the fact that I really haven't talked about this, not in detail, in my writing or in a blog or even on this podcast. So I thought today would be a good day to talk about that. If you've been following my writing, most people do know about some of the conditions I have, but I have never really gone in depth about how those conditions show up for me as a teacher. So if you don't know about that, let me take you all the way back to the beginning. So I married my husband a few months after I graduated from college. And during the course of us dating, I had to be really honest with my husband. I told him, I said, when that time of the month comes around, I said, it's just horrible. I said, I have horrible cramps. My cycle is not normal, it's irregular. And actually that is a more common thing with females, if you don't know that. But a lot of times people make you feel like you're just the oddball out. But I learned that that's more common than I thought it was. And sometimes I would be in a situation where I would be in the situation where my cycle would go on for 14 days, which was ridiculous and unheard of. And as a kid, one of the solutions that a doctor has suggested was putting me on birth control. But my mom and dad, I was raised in a very strict Christian household, and my mom and dad were not supportive of that. Pretty much they thought getting on birth control was just a license to have sex. And I'm like, you kind of have to have someone who wants to have sex with you for that to happen. And that was not the case for me as a kid. I was a tomboy, a severe introvert. I wasn't I was parents, I just want some relief. But suffice it to say, I didn't get that as a solution. So when I was in college, I strongly thought about sneaking and getting onto birth control, because they said that was something that would help. And I had so much fear that my parents would find out and they would cut me off at school. Really, as an adult now, I don't think that would have happened, but I had so much fear. So when I got married to my husband, that was the very first thing I did. And that actually made everything so much worse. And my husband's I think you really should go to the doctor. I think you really should get this looked into, because the amount of pain that you're experiencing is not normal. So eventually, we get to the point where we want to have kids, then it's just not happening. And this is when I start getting diagnosis. And another thing that happened, there was this show that we used to watch called Mystery Diagnosis. And on one of the shows, they talked about a condition called endometriosis. And my husband's well, maybe you have that. I was and granted, some of the things that happened in that episode were things that happened to me. I'm I don't know. This is TV. That can't be me. But long story short, I did eventually get diagnosed with endometriosis. I actually got diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. I found out that I had fibroid tumors, and that one of my fallopian tubes is possibly not functioning correctly. And that was a possibility because doctors couldn't agree on what was going on with my fallopian tube. I had two doctors and they never came to a conclusion. So to this day, I really don't know. And I wasn't willing to undergo any more invasive tests because I had so many invasive procedures done to get to the bottom of this. So let me start with polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is a hormonal condition. It affects your eggs. It can affect them getting to maturity, which can affect them being fertilized and, becoming an embryo and implanting and becoming a kid, right? So one of the things that happened was I was put on metformin. Metformin is typically a drug that people who have diabetes take. And I am a petite person. But what a lot of people don't know is that my closet is divided into two sizes. Currently, those sizes is size 4 and size 6. As a kid, I was like between size 0 and size 2. So I do appreciate being in a range where it's easier to buy clothes. And what happens sometimes, my hormones, it would get so unbalanced that I would just rapidly put on weight. And so I would get a pudgy stomach. I would be so bloated. And this is current life, going back and forth. There are some things I've learned over time with my diet that I can change. But the downside to taking metformin, it can make you feel kind of weird. If you don't eat when you're supposed to eat, you can start feeling fatigued. You can start feeling tired. So that's something I constantly deal with. People know I always have snacks at work. I have snacks in my work backpack. I have snacks in my car because I'll get into situations where I will just break out into a cold sweat. And normally it's because I've gotten super fatigued and I need to eat. So that's one thing I have to deal with. And I deal with that actually right now because I'm still on metformin. I did come off of metformin for a little bit of time. And we try to control it through my diet. But I'm not going to lie, I had a really hard time committing to the diet, so I eventually got back on the metformin. I will say the weeks I was able to commit to the diet, I felt awesome. But I had to cut out a lot of things, a lot of sugary things. I gave up milk a while ago, whole milk. Yes, I was one of those people that loved whole milk. Had it almost every single day. So I took that out of my diet. So it's just little things like that. But that's not the chronic pain piece. A few years into my career, my chronic pain was getting bad, and I hadn't been diagnosed with endometriosis yet. It was to the point my back was on fire, my feet would hurt, and it was just so hard to teach, and people would notice. So this older black lady, she was a counselor in my school, and she said, "Shantae, are you okay? You just look like you're struggling every single day." I was like, "Well, on my feet all the time." And, I always had a little quick response. Because I'm a very private person, and you probably wouldn't guess that was all the rain I do, but I am. So I always have a wall beyond walls, beyond walls, beyond walls. And with those walls, I share limited information. So you may think you know me, but you don't know everything. So I'm like, "Oh, no." And so she pushed back just like an older black woman typically does. She's like, "So Shantae, I've watched you day after day. This is not normal teacher tired. There's something not right. You should go get this looked into." So with that, with my mom, with my husband, I finally do go in, and I wasn't getting pregnant on top of that, right? So I go in, they're like, "Well, it looks like you have polyps, right? We can go in and remove that. That should help." I wake up from surgery, and I knew something wasn't right because my husband was there, the doctor was there, and she said, "Well, I already talked to Jermaine, that's my husband. I want to talk to you." And they have pictures. And it was actually pictures of the inside of my body. Well, I didn't have polyps. I had fibroid tumors the size of a golf ball. And they were pressing on the inside of me, which was causing all the pain. Some of it, right? So she's like, "Yeah, they said the ultrasound we did, it was only seeing pieces of it. So what we thought were two polyps was just one part of the fibroid, and the other side was another part. We missed the whole thing." And so but I knew my mother, she had those fibroid tumors. And if you Google online, there's tons of articles about fibroids and black women and things like that. So that made me afraid because I knew eventually this situation led to my mom getting a what is it called? It's not a hysterectomy. It's when you get the partial, you keep your ovaries. Oh, I can't believe this word escaping me. But I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to have children. I don't want to get in a situation where I'm going to have to give up my fertility. That's not okay. So I finally went in, and you cannot diagnose endometriosis without there's no test to do it. They have to go in, and they did end up doing a laparoscopy. So they went in and did like an exploratory look. And they took all these pictures, and you could see the endometriosis. Endometriosis is when the lining inside of the uterus grows outside, and I had it everywhere. So, and they determined I was at stage 4. So a lot of this pain I was having, this chronic pain, was being caused by this endometriosis. And let me tell you, it is hell to teach through chronic pain. Not only did I have food everywhere for the metformin I was taking for the PCOS, because I got that diagnosis first. And then I learned about the fibroids. And then I learned that I had an endometriosis. And also during that time is when we came to the crossroad about maybe one of my fallopian tubes wasn't working. I'm like, damn, is there anything about my reproductive system that is working correctly? Like anything? No, it seemed. So they cleaned it up, right? I felt better for some time. And essentially what happens, they came back with a vengeance. And that is just hard because I didn't want to talk to people about it, because even explaining endometriosis, to say that it's like the lining from the inside of the uterus growing outside, like it just explaining it to people, because I've done it. People get uncomfortable. They don't want to hear about that. And so I'm like, how can I push through this pain but not share so much about my personal life? So I went a while without saying anything. And it just, some days would be bad. So what I did, I started being strategic. Sometimes staying on my feet all day at work, I just couldn't, because I was in so much pain. So I sit in my classroom where I had desks throughout the classroom that were empty. So I could sit from desk to desk and move around the classroom and not have to stand up. So that was one of the things I did to push through the chronic pain. I always made sure I had pills everywhere. So in my car, I had to leave. In my purse, I had to leave. In my work backpack, I had to leave. I had it by the side of my bed at home. The other thing I did, I tried to get all my work done at work, so when I got home, I could just rest. So a lot of days before I had my kids, I would come home. I would tell my husband, you're going to have to feed yourself. I would get into bed, pop my pills, and go to sleep. Now, I also had the option of getting on some type of prescription medicine. I just wasn't comfortable taking pain pills to get through. Like, my fear was like, well, I become addicted to these things. And there are some people in my family who struggle with alcoholism. And so I thought about that, like, is that something, is getting on these pills, will that make me become an addict? Like, I thought about these things. So I decided I'm not doing this, which means when you take over-the-counter medicine, there's only so much you can do to alleviate your pain. So I would just pop the pills, put a heat pack on my back, use icy hot to deal with some of the muscle spasms I would get from the pain, and just try to ride it out, right? Hot water bottle, you name it, I tried it. And then we really started trying to have kids. So the birth control helped manage some of the pain a little bit, right? But to get pregnant, to do the infertility treatment, I had to come off of a lot of the medicines I was taking to maintain some type of function. So when I eventually got pregnant, and had my kids, they went in to remove all the endometriosis again, right? And surprise, surprise, it came back with a vengeance. After I had my kids, about 2 years after, we tried to get pregnant again, and again, and again. And we had to do infertility treatments. And my sons, who at this time, we were up walking, they're talking, they were like, Mommy, you don't play with us anymore. You're just in the bed all the time. Because now I'm trying to get pregnant. Now I'm off the medicine that's alleviating some of the pain. So I am just like a wreck. And all I want to do is just lay down and not be bothered. And that was actually one of the things that stopped me from pursuing any more infertility treatments. So at 33, I went to my doctor and I said, I'm ready. And earlier, before I even had kids, when it was discovered how bad my pain was, it was like, okay, do you want to have kids? Is the thing you want to do? Because you could just have a hysterectomy. I had a different doctor at the time. New doctor, we had talked about this. She said, whenever you are done with these treatments, this after I had my kids, I'll be willing to do this. So I finally went to her at 33. I was like, I'm done. I told her what the conversation between my son. I said, I can't do this anymore because infertility treatments are mentally taxing, especially for somebody like me. I'm a perfectionist, I'm a goal setter, and I'm a goal achiever. I believe that anything I want to do, I can do it. But this was the one thing I couldn't do. Like, there was no amount. I did everything they told me to do, and it just kept failing. Every infertility treatment failed except the one that brought me my twin boys. So every treatment before them, every treatment I had after them, they all failed. And to be a person who's used to winning, to used to getting, to used to accomplishing something, and is to have it constantly fail, I just couldn't take it anymore. And then the pain on top of that I had to endure, which is like twice and 3 times as much because I wasn't on the birth control to help manage it. I couldn't take certain medicines to manage it. I just couldn't take it. And so she's like, well, Shantae, there's been some advancements. I don't want to do the hysterectomy. I was just like, excuse me? I'm like, well, are you going to do like what my mom had, like do like a partial? She's like, nope, I want to try this thing called an ablation. So ablation is simply when it's going to pretty much fry your uterus. They kill everything, the lining, everything. And essentially it's going to kill your fertility because it's like you can't get pregnant because the lining, you don't have it, right? But I'm 36 now, and I will say for 3 years, I've been chronic pain free. And it's scary. The first year was so weird for my husband and I because it was the first year in our relationship that he didn't have to deal with me and my chronic pain. He didn't have to pick me up from the door and carry me up the stairs and put me into bed. He didn't have to bring me medicine. He didn't have to rub my back. He didn't have to get the heat pad out. He didn't have to find the icy hot. He didn't have to put a rag on my forehead because I done broke out into a sweat. He didn't have to sit there and pray over me to hope the pain will go away. Like, we just got to be and got to enjoy ourselves. We got to do stuff. We didn't have to be out somewhere and go home because the pain was getting too much. So that first year was just like surreal. Like, this is what it is like because I have identified I was at 13 when my chronic pain started. So from 13 to 33, that's 20 years, 2 decades of my life was chronic pain. And so that when I turned 33 and got the ablation and healed from that, and I was just doing things like, I can't even explain it to you. And like, one of the things I did was I started traveling, like we started going places because traveling was just a nightmare. Like, we would try to do something and it's just like, I'm not feeling good. I can't do this today. We can't go out today. So that's been great, but we'll have to be honest. Now there's 2 more years that has passed. So I'm at 3. And like, my biggest fear is that the other shoe's going to drop and it's all going to come back. I fear that so much. Like, anytime I have the inkling of pain, I'm like, is it coming back? And I know that may not seem rational, but it's a real fear of mine because it's like, this feels so good not to have this pain, not to have to navigate. I hope it doesn't come back. Well, my doctor promised that if it comes back, she will do the hysterectomy. And we may do a partial so I can keep my ovaries because we talked about that. It will put me into menopause. And that was the other reason why she didn't want to do it early. She's like, at 33, I didn't want to put you into menopause. I'm like, fine. And she was right. It worked for 3 years, so I appreciate less invasion. So how did I get through up until 33? Because that means my whole entire teaching career up to 33 was surrounded in chronic pain. So I talked about the desk strategically placed. I talked about having like my medicine every place. The other thing I had to eventually learn to do, I had to confide in people at work. Because one of the things that happened with my chronic pain, the hardest part of my day was getting up. I'm always an early riser. So I would be awake for hours and I just couldn't get out of the bed. And this is the weirdest thing that people don't understand because I would be late to work sometimes. I would be late, like I wouldn't be like so late that, the students are sitting there waiting for me. You know how schools are. You have the teacher time, then you have the student time. I'll show closer to the student time than teacher time. And you know how it is. When somebody be rolling in late, people got to say something. So finally somebody, they're going to call themselves having a crucial conversation with me, trying to say, well, Shantae, you should be here on time like everyone else. And I was in pain. My back, my stomach was on fire. And I was just like, I just couldn't get out of the bed. And and the person was like, well, Shantae, you need to set an alarm clock. And I was just like, okay, since you're going to have a conversation with me, let's go. And this is the first time I actually practiced saying and naming my condition out loud. And I was like, I did have an alarm clock up. I've been awake since 5. And they're like, you've been awake since 5. What do you mean you can't get out of bed? And I said, I have endometriosis, stage 4, and it's extremely painful. And every single day it's hard for me to get up and get out of bed. So I wake up super early, and I spend all that time trying to will myself out of bed. Even when I get up, it's hard to move. I'm in so much pain. I have to get up. I have to shower. I have to eat food so I can take the medicine, because if I don't eat food, I'm going to be nauseous. And then I have to uncomfortably drive to work. And that was the other thing. I ended up getting a heat pad that you could plug in to my car, so it would be more comfortable for me to drive. So I said, I'm not late because I didn't set the alarm. I'm not late because I'm just rolling in or being not responsible. I'm late because I'm fighting through tremendous pain to get here. So I would appreciate it if you would not confront me about these things. I'm doing the best I can. I promise you. And I said, if I didn't care, I just wouldn't show up at all. If I didn't care, I would take off for work all the time, every single time it was so bad. But I don't do that. And the person was just floored. And the person said to me, I just wish you would have said something. And I said, that's the thing. I said, I don't want people's pity. I don't want them feeling sorry for me. I just want to come here and teach. But I said, some days it's really hard. But with that, the person had a point. So I did tell a few other people. And it changed people's perspective of me. So if I was running late, even though I would get there before the students, people were like, oh. And then the days, because I did have one day. There was one day I was late. And I was not going to make it to my first class on time. I said, guys, I don't know if I'm going to come in today. I'm going to come. And so, because my teacher friends knew, they covered my class. Principal never knew I wasn't even there for part of my first class. And I got to work. And I taught the rest of the day because I just really didn't want to take off. Moving forward, as I was getting the endometriosis treated, and would get better, and then sometimes it wasn't get better, I got to a point where I started taking care of myself and taking off for work. And I was really strategic about it, because if you have a chronic medical condition, you know this, right? And you got to be responsible about it, or people are going to be salty with you. So I made emergency plans, because my health is an emergency. Because what some people didn't know is some nights I would be in the emergency room when my pain got so bad and the over-the-counter medicine wasn't working. My husband would drive me to the emergency room so they could give me medicine. And a side note here, because of the heroin epidemic and some of these other epidemics where people are abusing medicine, it made it harder for people like me who had real conditions to get medicine. So over time, I would get all these questions why are you here? What? And my husband, he would get so frustrated because he's like, she's not a druggie. She's not an addict. She is not functioning, and she wants to go to work tomorrow. So one day, my husband took me to the emergency room. It was real late. We probably got there around 8. I didn't get seen or treated until about 12. They wanted me to stay for a few hours. I got home at 2, and I got up and went to work that same day, because that's just who I was. But it wasn't healthy. I should have probably stayed home that day. I was literally in the emergency room, but I still went to work because I just felt like the kids needed me. And so I started learning, Shantae, that's not healthy. If you go to the emergency room, keep your behind at home the next day. And so I started doing that. And even my parents don't even know how many times I had been because of that. And going to the emergency, so then you get good about what clinics you go to that'll be cheaper for your insurance. So we started looking at stuff like that because, my husband, he's like, I can't stand to see you in pain like that. I will pay anything for you to get that medicine. And even then, I still refused to get on any type of prescription thing, even though I had to go to the emergency, because essentially what they would do, they would check me out. I was clearly having a flare up. At this point in time, I had a history of it, and I had a confirmed condition. But even with that, they still have the question, are you getting addicted to coming in here? Like, I'm not in here like that. You know what I'm saying? I would probably go to the emergency room a few times a year. Okay, so it wasn't like I was there every single month or every week, right? But I just felt that relief. So besides taking off of work, the other thing is like being willing to stick with acknowledging or accepting that you're going to have to be actively looking for treatments for your condition. Endometriosis is not curable. Now, typically, if people get it removed and they get everything, the key, you got to get everything, 90% of people don't have any problems. I was one in the 10% where every time I had to remove it, it came back, right? Polycystic ovarian syndrome caused me all types of issues, interfere with my fertility. And so I constantly have to reevaluate. Like, for example, I'm probably on my 5th or 6th birth control pill because over time what will start happening is it would start working. And currently I take birth control continuously, so I take a pill every single day. That there's actually being used for the hormonal supplement to help me balance out my hormones. So that's why I actually take it every single day. So I'm one of those wonderful people that do not menstruate anymore. And the ablation, if you get an ablation, a lot of women who get an ablation, that stops their menstruating. So the positive for me, actually sticking with it and treating my endometriosis, I got a positive, like not having a menstrual cycle, like being a female and not even having to deal with that. I haven't dealt with that for 3 years. So that's been freaking awesome. And it's been freaking awesome for my husband because he's like, there's no reason we can't get it on today. Yes, man, I love my husband. I do. But that's what he said. And my husband is, if you ever meet him, my husband is incredibly honest. That's just who he is. He just says what's ever on his mind. And that's one of the things I just love and find sexy about him is that that's who he is. He never lies to me. He never tells me what he thinks I want to hear. He's just super honest like that. But I appreciate that. But you have to actively seek things. So like one of the things I did for a moment of time, like I'm sick of how metformin makes me feel. Like it makes me feel fatigued. I almost fainted in class one day. And the other thing, so I'm about to say 2 points here. Not only do you have to trust and tell colleagues to have somebody to trust in, you got to be honest with your students if your students are old enough. So for most of my career, I've taught middle school and high school. So my middle school kids knew I was on metformin. They didn't know why. I didn't reveal it. I said it's treating a condition, but I said sometimes it may make Mrs. Barnes a little shaky or look a little weak or fatigued. If Mrs. Barnes starts looking really bad and looks like she's going to faint, this is what you do. So I had like a little folder on my desk that had the instructions because you tell kids stuff and they forget. I said, if you forget what I'm telling you here, you get the folder. One year I had a class with 12 students. Yeah, dream. But 10 of the students were boys, 2 girls. And I was sitting at my desk and I had one kid, his desk was touching my desk and they were taking a quiz and I just was not feeling good at all. I know what to sit. And the student turned and looked at me. He said, Mrs. Barnes, you're not looking so good. I said, do your test. I said, every time I turn around, you looking over here at Mrs. Barnes, seeing what she's doing. You need to be taking your test. And he said, Mrs. Barnes, you do not look good. The next thing I know, I went to stand up because I'm going to use closer proximity. Because even though his test, I'm going to get up and point to the number because he really wasn't filling out his test. It was really getting on my nerves. I'm like, that's why you were sitting by my desk so I can make sure you're doing your test. And when I went to get up, I got so dizzy and I turned around and there was a trash can. I just started vomiting into the trash can. And I just remembered like almost blacking out. And one of the boys, he's like, this is it. This is what Mrs. Barnes was talking about. Oh, crap. What do we do? Get the folder. So they actually followed the plan because it was to call one of my colleagues who knew what was going on with me. They followed the plan. And I actually, then it got to my principal. My principal was not in the plan, but my colleague freaked out. I said, girl, I didn't tell you to tell the principal. That was not part of the plan. She said, Shantae, you almost failed. Like, I'm telling somebody. So the principal was like, Shantae, you have to go home. So I was able to get home safely, and I stayed in bed, and I actually took off the next day. But if your students are old enough where they can do something as simple as call a colleague or take the pass, because in the photo I had a pass to go to a teacher's room, do that. Because also if you have a chronic condition, your safety is important. It's a health condition. And so it's okay to let students know. And we came back, I debriefed with the students, and they're like, well, are you okay? And I said, I appreciate you guys. Like, we had like a real moment there. And I said, because you took care of Mrs. Barnes, you made sure I was okay. So we had a little moment. I said, so now, since I was gone for a day, I know I'm about to reteach. I know y'all probably didn't do nothing I left. and we moved forward. But also, so back to the metformin, the second part about the metformin, I decided to come off of it because I was tired of how it was making me feel. Case in point, the story I just told you. So I came off of it and I tried so hard to treat it with the diet. And I'm saying this is that there's no perfect plan, especially if you have a chronic condition, but you may just get tired of the plan or need a different type of plan. So don't give up on yourself. Don't be like, oh, woe is me. This is my condition. Nothing will ever change. It's birth. And like I told my husband, I said, at some point in time, I think I may try to go back on the diet because like the endometriosis has been okay because of the ablation, but the PCOS, because I have to stay on the metformin to help with that. It's hard because the metformin helps regulate my hormones. It helps my weight not to have huge swings. I still have swings. Last school year, for example, I was on the small end of my weight. So I was around the size 4 most of last school year. This school year, being a school administrator, I'm back up to a size 6 and I've been riding there pretty heavily. And that's how my weight swings back and forth hardcore like that. And I'm okay. I love myself when I'm a 4. I love myself when I'm a 6. So, in summary, if you have a chronic condition, you can still be a teacher. You have to figure out what supports you need to put in place for you to make it. So for me, I had desks strategically placed around the room so I could sit down when I was in chronic pain. The other thing I did is I actually went to several doctors to get on a treatment plan and figure out how I can deal with this. Yes, there's no cure, but I could take action to help alleviate some of my situations. Tell colleagues, tell students if they're old enough, confide in someone so people don't think you're lazy or doing your job. They know, oh, this is what's going on. And if you get in some real trouble, they can come and actually support you. And then last, don't be hopeless. Don't just stick with one plan, one treatment plan. Try to see if there's something else that you can do. And believe, I was going to close this off, believe that you can do this job and have chronic pain. Like, sometimes people feel like they have to throw in the towel and they can't be successful. And most people don't know my career I've taught through pain, through the majority of my career. And yes, it was hell. And yes, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I did it. I did that thing. I rocked it. And if the chronic pain comes back and I have to do that again, I know exactly what I have to do. I still have my medical condition of PCOS that I'm currently managing, but I'm managing it. I'm making it happen, and I'm taking it. And it's as cliche. Gosh, Shante, get the word out. As cliche as it sounds, I'm taking it one day at a time. And if I would give a special shout out, it would be to my husband, because that dude in my ride or die, he has supported me through all of this. And there ain't nothing like somebody who will love you through the good, the bad, the ugly, and through the pain. So if you're an educator out here listening, or maybe you're not an educator, you're just a person out there that has chronic pain, I hope this was helpful. Till next week.